All right. Fulcrum of Truth. Welcome back.
Yeah, another episode.
Yeah. And you've been kind of making me choose the topics here, but I'm gonna throw it on you tonight
Yeah,
to pick what we're gonna talk about. So
yeah. So on the board, we looked at our list, and I really was leaning towards this ancient knowledge one title that we have up there. Um, you know that like a lot of the work that we do is based on the understanding that ancients knew uh, different understandings than we do now, and uh, through that we're kind of using ancient literature as best we can to kind of extract the understandings that they had. And what we've been finding is that there's a big contradiction or a lot of discrepancies in kind of what our common knowledge is now versus what we're finding in a lot of old ancient documents and a lot of old manuscripts and stuff like that.
yeah, I look at it personally a little bit different. I think you're aware that I'm not completely sold that ancients knew what they were talking about. Um, Maybe they had some higher knowledge, uh, but understanding what you know and actually applying it are different things, right? I see situations where there's no real evidence that Stone Age people had some knowledge that was higher than ours. If they did, why were they using stone tools? Or maybe you want to say it goes back further than that, and we can talk about that kind of idea and how that relates to ancient knowledge. But, for me, I do think there was some ancient understanding, and we found a lot of things in our research and discoveries that suggest that maybe people knew things a lot longer ago than they did.
Yeah, I mean we have they keep I guess if we to start out we could go over the understanding that uh, the archaeological record of humans past over the past 10,000 years. I think we have in the United States at least, right? We This is where our education comes from, but we have this like concise picture that we were kind of laid out when we were younger.
What's presented to us,
Yeah, it's like
right?
what's accepted across academia for archaeologists,
Yeah.
and this, what's the accepted history of the
Hmm.
human race. And it really feels like in the past 10 or 20 years, since we've been out of high school, out of college, that we begin to see all these discoveries like Göbekli Tepe, and they even have some things that are unearthing around Göbekli Tepe and all around in the African and Egyptian pyramid areas. They're finding ancient ruins that are clearly going back beyond 10,000 years. But due to this narrative that's been cast across the United States and across the world about human history and our development, it's like they already put their post in the ground and said, here's the line of where humans end. We can't be smart prior to 6,000 BC during the Egyptian times. Behind that's like a Stone Age type lifestyle where we're hunters and gatherers and stuff like that. And there's no development of civilization. And I think that that's where uh, there's this clash, right? We have all this new information, but we don't know how to fit it into the narrative that we've already cast out there and to explain to everybody, because we can't just tell them, oh, what we taught you guys was wrong and this is the new understanding, because obviously we're not going to believe the new understanding.
Yeah. And you mentioned Gobekli Tepe. And there kind of is that flag in the ground where I feel like if you look at where we start, um, modern knowledge, modern history,
Yeah.
and it's ancient history, but modern writings, documented history as it plays out. You kind of have the Egyptians, you have Mesopotamia, and then now as we're discovering some things in South America, like the Americas kind of thing. But they date all of these things to just what is it, 6,000, 7,000 years ago,
Yeah.
where we know that humans, or we think we know. I hate using the idea that we know,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's generally understood that the human species has been on Earth for a couple 100,000 years.
Yeah.
So if we're around for 194,000 years and we document nothing and do nothing and then all of a sudden, okay, now just these last 6,000 years. This is when everything modern has to fit into.
Yeah.
What does that mean for us? How did we get here?
I think part of it also comes down to what we talk about with the with like world ending events, like cataclysmic events in history, in Earth's history, essentially, right? Personally, what I believe is that there was multiple civilizations or multiple uprisings of the human race on Earth over the past hundreds of 200, 500,000 years. And that every 10,000 or 50,000 years, maybe even less, maybe it's 2,000 to 10,000 years, we end up having a cataclysmic event that essentially creates something like a 50-foot tall tsunami or some type of volcano that covers the atmosphere with ash and causes the sun to be blocked and makes it so that the earth is inhabitable, and in some way, shape, or form causes the earth to come to a position where humans can't survive. And when that cycle occurs, I think that some humans survive every time. A very small number of human beings are able to survive through this cataclysmic event. And then what you're left with is this remnants of what could be, who knows what level of civilization and technology, left with just a few people with the remnants of their technology, and they have to rebuild civilization. And when they rebuild, I think we lose a lot of that understanding from the previous cataclysmic event, from the previous buildup of the human race. And what we're seeing in the world right now, in our generation, you could say, if we're talking about multiple generations of the human race springing up on Earth, we're seeing the remnants of that previous cataclysm, or even multiple previous cataclysms, where we have no idea what we're looking at, but it is a very, very well advanced, developed civilization.
I actually want to explore that a little bit, because I have imagined a situation where, let's say, you and I and a couple females, right? Obviously, we have to have some form of procreation available. We survive some sort of cataclysmic event, and we're isolated. We know, that there's a very, very small population of people available to us, because we just simply can't go out and reach these other groups. And there are probably other isolated small groups around the world, but the world is gigantic. Imagine us surviving something like that, and the stories that we would tell to our subsequent offspring. What would they be? Right? If it was only a group of 6 or 8 people, and we had a couple, people that thought like us and had experiences like us, and we would try to explain to our offspring, we had this thing called electricity, and like it brought light from the sky, like we just had light everywhere we wanted it.
It would seem like magic, right?
Yeah, we can't do it right now.
Yeah.
But, right, the only thing we have right now is fire. I'm sorry, but when we lived before the cataclysm, there was light anywhere we wanted it.
You make me think of the story of the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
And this technology, essentially, that they had that could feed everybody, and if you were exposed to it.
The stories that we would tell these offspring, and then they would carry it down to their offspring. So just within a couple generations, the actual knowledge is within us. Like, yes, we understand, like, if we can go mine some copper and we can make a battery, and we can, or if we can wind a motor and create a generator and make electricity, then we could have light if we can make a light bulb, right? But those things, after a cataclysm, are out of reach to us. We're just not able to do it. But we try to pass this information down to the next generation. Like, hey, you can do this. Like, this is a thing. Yeah. We experienced it before the cataclysm. And how that would progress generation to generation, and how they would develop forward from there.
Yeah. I think it's amazing when you think about it. I mean, one of the main evidences for this or pieces of evidence you could say for this ancient knowledge is not so much, they have the Egyptian pyramids, right, and they have the Aztecs and Incas, and then they have a lot of South American pyramids that are out there, with megalithic stones, right? Megalithic stone being a stone that's like 100 to 1,000 tons, right? We're talking about 500,000 to 1,000,000 pound stones and objects that are like, even by today's standards, would take a large feat to move, and a super high level of engineering and technology. And even when we start, from what I've researched, when we move things even today that are around the 1,000,000 pound plus mark, this is like a lot of one time, first time ever type situations where it's, we don't do this every day. We're going to move this object that weighs 1,000,000 pounds, and it's going to take a year of planning, and then we're going to move it, and then that's going to be that job. And it's not like they do it every day. So when we look at those stones, not so much, when we get 1,000 ton plus, that's what I'm talking about. The enormous stones that make up the foundation of the Inca structures in the mountains, right? Not the structures that they're talking about the Incas built on top of these ancient structures, but there's that initial foundation layer of these stones that it looks like they're placed by giants. You know what I mean? It's just completely unnatural as to why they would take these enormous 1,000,000 pound stones up to the top of a mountain and fit them together like a puzzle. You know what I mean? Because even the modern Incas that were living there, that say where they came to that place and found refuge and built on top of it, they built large stone blocks as well, but nothing like the original foundation that was there, which looks like it's from a 10,000 plus year old civilization. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the problem for me that I still haven't been able to reconcile is these are just rocks, right? Where's the metal? Where's the electronics? Where's the more advanced stuff, right? We're talking about rocks.
I'm glad you said it though, because this is even when I was younger, this is funny. This feeds into a theory I had when I was probably 20 years old when I came up with this theory. And it was just that, what if ancient civilizations were so advanced and so smart that they used all biodegradable materials? You know what I mean? Like, we make plastics and we make things that are supposed to last thousands and thousands of years, or, forever on the earth. But it would be very easy for a civilization not to do that if they appreciated the environment. You know what I mean? In the least bit. If they understood biodegradable and they understood things that lasted too long, being clogging up rivers and messing up fisheries and stuff like that, they would easily go all to biodegradable. But that was when I was younger. And I said, oh, well, all that stuff could vanish over time, right? You could lose all their technology, and the only thing left would be the stones. That was a little bit of a naive concept. But as I got older and learned that all materials break down like this, even our steel, right? We think that a piece of steel from a building is going to last 10,000 years. It's not. It's going to oxidize, and the earth is going to take that back into its belly and turn it back into the ground, and it will be gone. It will vanish from the face of the earth, almost as though it swallows it. And I don't think that people realize that. Like, things that have been on the earth 20,000 years ago that were man-made, stone is the only thing left. And I think that's why we only find the stone. It's why we're not finding these technologies like you're talking about.
It's true. I certainly respect that idea, and I just think we would find something, some other indicator of an advanced presence. But if they chose actually to only use natural materials, then that makes sense. Like, if you're in balance with the earth and with nature, then I mean, I would happily go live in a log cabin, in the woods. I think, I have no problem with that, and I think society, if we adopted more of that natural balance with nature, would be better off. And maybe you're right. I just don't know. For me, it feels like these are big rocks. Okay, great. You move some big rocks. I don't know how you did it. But why isn't there any other evidence, any other leftovers? But you're right. If it's a long time ago, I mean, the last ice age only ended what? 20,000 years ago? 10,000, 20,000 years ago? Somewhere in that range. Mm-hmm. And I think they say that there was over a mile of ice sitting on the place that we are sitting in right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Imagine a mile-high pile of ice on top of us.
Well,
What would be left?
there's a spot just north of us in northeast United States in Pennsylvania where the ice shelf came down from the north and stopped. And supposedly you can go out there, and if you dig straight down, you find this wall of rocks.
Yeah.
Basically, it's like earth going straight down like a cliff, and then up against it is a bunch of rocks that the ice had pushed all the way up against the cliff, and it goes down like hundreds of feet. It's like really amazing when you think about the cliff of ice that
And
must have existed.
that'll destroy a lot of stuff.
Yeah. And
But I still feel like something would be left.
well, there's also the theory you have of the giant tsunami, right? If we had if it was like a water apocalypse on the Earth, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I want to get into that.
I mean, we look at all of the ancient stories in religions and mythology and stuff like that, and I think it's clear for anybody that's done a little bit of research that they all talk about a flood. You know, a flood that occurred that lasted extremely long time.
It cannot be a coincidence.
I don't think so.
Can't be a coincidence.
And when that happened, you know, I've explained that if the flood came, it would be like washing the earth. You know what I mean? It would literally wash away everything on the surface of the earth, all the stuff that was on the land, and drain it down to the lowest points of the oceans where the least of our research has been done, right? So if you go down to the bottom of the oceans, they talk about us knowing less about that than we do about our moon or about the solar system. And with that being said, if the surfaces of the earth were wiped clean by this water apocalypse or a tidal wave or some type of tsunami that came across and lasted and kept going for days and days and days, it would deposit all of the things that it collected into the lowest points in the ocean and into the crevices of the ocean, and you would get this cleansing of the earth of all human, you know, remnants, and left with again the giant rocks, you know, the things that the water couldn't move.
Yeah, and we also don't know what kind of time scales we're talking about. Right.
Or how many times it happened. I mean, imagine a scenario where we had an apocalypse,
cycles.
right? Well, imagine, we talk about there being 10,000 years maybe or 20,000 years between these, but there's nothing to say that they didn't have two back-to-back right before us, right? Where there was like a tsunami and a world-ending event for humanity, and then 10 years later, another one. And it's like now we got a double whammy of getting this place cleared, and it was right before we came along. It's just a matter of chance and what could have happened.
Yeah, I don't want to venture too far off, but I really need to do more reading on this. But you've heard of that Younger Dryas?
I've heard
event?
The Younger Dryas period. I've heard it go into a little bit.
The way I understand it, like you have what we think was the extinction of the dinosaurs, right? And we attribute that to some meteor hitting Gulf of Mexico kind of area. The Younger Dryas is a similar, maybe, I want to say it's even more significant in the archaeological record and much, much, much more recent. Like 20,000, 30,000 years ago, not 65 million years ago, right? So when we talk about meteor impacts creating an extinction event, I think that we have a record of one that is really relatively recent. In comparison to when we think about dinosaurs, right? Like definitely within the life, within the expected time period where humans were on Earth.
I got you. Okay. So not going back to dinosaurs, but not just this last ice age.
No. So if we say
another event,
if we say humans have been on Earth for 200,000 years, this Younger Dryas event, I need to read more about it because I could be going way off here. But I think it was like well within that period of time.
Yeah. Just maybe in the last 100,000 years or something.
Yeah.
See, I think that, you know, you remind me of another good point that I found during the research was about the so in India, you know, in the beginning we talked about the ages of these ancient cultures, you know, and the civilizations that we're finding and how they're kind of locked due to the narrative they've already put out. But one of the things I found in my research was them talking about cave drawings in India that were 100,000 years old plus, right? So they have cave drawings out there from prehistoric man, you know, like cavemen essentially scribbling drawings on the walls and stuff from, this is what they attributed to beyond 10,000 years ago. You know, like they come out and say this is 100,000-year-old cave drawings that we think, you know, due to testing or due to what their research is showing them and our analysis is showing them. And in those drawings, now this is a little bit tapping in that what the viewers don't know about yet, but our, with our work, but in those drawings, and I've shown you this before, which you probably don't remember, I found the patterns. I found mathematical patterns in these cave drawings, in their shapes, in the, when they would draw two villagers, like two different tribes, kind of, with one had identifying clothing or marks on one side, and the other one had identifying clothing marks separating them, and then there would be these wild patterns set up within these characters, showing like these three go together, and 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 it was showing mathematical properties within these cave drawings, and the patterns I was seeing in them really led me to believe that they were actually doing some type of language with these drawings that they were, especially just numbers and math, not tracking things. If it was just calendars and stuff, or even precession and cycles of the solar system, they seem to have been drawing those on the walls 100,000 years ago, they're saying. So it's like, what happened between 100,000 years ago and 10,000 years ago that we lost? And there's no way they were just drawing cave drawings for 10,000 years before all of a sudden somebody sparked up and said, oh, let me write a language. No, those languages were already developing.
Yeah, it raises good questions because I watched a thing. It was a while back now, and I think I told you about it. But right when you watch the sun, when you think about our solar cycle, we have a leap year every 4 years, and humans have known about that for a long time, right? You need to observe the sun for a few decades. Right, within the span of one person's life, you need to observe the sun, and you can kind of get the pattern of
not the
what
whole
it does.
pattern.
Not the
Only
whole pattern,
yeah.
but you can get pretty accurate within a single human's lifetime.
Yeah.
Historically, there's a lot of evidence that humans did not necessarily completely follow the sun. They also followed the moon.
Yeah.
And the moon takes a lot longer to figure out. Okay,
Well,
the cycle of the moon is drawn out over many decades.
Well, you bring up a good question.
Yeah.
So this is what I was just thinking as you were explaining that is, there's a cycle of the sun that it goes through that can be viewed during a lifetime, right? Over the course of 20 or 50 years. Right?
And you can view several cycles and make some
Yeah, I think the sun is even
about.
on an 11-year cycle or something like that, I believe, in terms of its that might just be with its flipping of its pole.
I think that's with the I think 11 years or somewhere around that is about the weather on the sun.
Okay.
But the actual transit of the sun over the sky is really a 4-year thing.
Okay.
Right.
So they can see it, right?
Yeah.
And then with the moon, it's much more incremental.
I want to say the moon is like 27 years.
Yeah. That
So
sounds
if
right,
you want
actually.
to see multiple cycles of the moon,
Yeah.
you need to observe it over decades.
Well, so that's what I'm getting to is they were able to observe it during that period of time and take their data on it and make their calculations on it. But there was a certain moment in human history and every civilization where they got all that data, and then someone was able to come along and calculate out very far the next largest cycle, right? This cosmological cycle that the Earth and our solar system goes through, right? So they weren't just able to. At some point, they were observing what they could in their lifetime, right? And then at some point, humans came along with math and a civilization and said, we're going to calculate out a calendar like the Mayas and the Mayan calendar that goes out hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, 10,000 years to show a cycle of the sun that they understood, which is understood now to be the same thing. And that's what's really impressive to me, like I would like to do the math on that and figure out what level of math they had to complete to calculate the larger cycles and precession of the solar system around them, the things they didn't observe.
The thing that drives me is we have all these different, as we're told, different civilizations on Earth, whether it's the, China region, India region, Middle East, European, South American, right? We have all these different cultures, and they all seem to have come upon this same understanding, right?
Yeah.
That to me doesn't make sense. They all independently figured out these very complex things. It makes so much more sense that one person figured it out and shared that information. And then somehow now these different cultures are different cultures, and but they all know this from someplace, right? When you
Yeah.
think about Einstein and relativity, right? We all know relativity because of one guy.
Hmm.
Okay. One guy figured that out and then he shared it with everybody. And now all the different cultures know it. So when you're talking about something really complex or really advanced, to me, it's more likely that one person sometime in the past figured this out.
Hmm.
They spread it across the earth. And then for whatever reason, these different cultures got separated.
Yeah. But that remnants of that understanding is still
Right,
there and
right. They carried
underlying
it along. Yeah,
whatever it is they could keep with them, whatever they
yeah.
kept with it instead of losing it. But I see what you mean. I mean it really like you know since we're on the topic of ancient knowledge, I'll break down for you how I see that happening, right? How humans came about having the understandings that we do about science, technology, the universe, God, everything, society, and I personally believe in prophets, right? This is a term, again, we've talked about how terms have predefined notions to people.
Sure.
For me, a prophet transcends all religions, right? It doesn't matter. I believe they're prophet in Buddhism and Hinduism and all the Abrahamic religions and all the South American, North American religions of the Indians and all that, and American Native Americans and all that. I believe that there's been prophets in all of these religions. And a prophet, more so, it transcends just a single religion of saying that Jesus Christ was a prophet or Muhammad was a prophet or Moses was a prophet. I think that there's been thousands of prophets across human history, and that God essentially taps into certain people and feeds them understanding and divine knowledge that is like basically impossible for humans to understand, but he kind of weaves it into their mind through a special system, of divine understanding, divine energy. And when God touches these individuals across the earth over these thousands of years, that's when these real large jumps in technology and understandings have been coming to human beings. So, like, making fire might be a good example, right? The first human being that mastered fire and learned how to capture fire, right? I would say there's a chance they got some type of divine understanding from God, right?
Is there any other animal that makes their own fire?
I don't know, but that's a good point. That the fact that it's such an advanced reasoning, logic thing that you have to have. It's like this also goes back to when we talk about Tesla and Einstein and how these really the greatest pioneers in science and technology and understanding that we have will always explain that they don't know where these ideas come from. We don't, everybody, Tesla, Einstein, and a bunch of other guys speculated about where these thoughts came from, but it was always some weird, esoteric, spiritual.
Yeah, I wanna stop you there and
know.
get your thoughts on something because I like to take a little bit different view of it. In
Well,
that,
just real quick, that this information's coming to these civilizations all over the place, all over the place in pieces, right, and in different levels and in different things, right. I think that one prophet might gain an understanding, for example, with Jesus Christ, right? He gained this understanding of just love and companionship and fellow man and like loving each other and like, religion was not the way. This, God is for everybody. It's a personal relationship with God. He's in your heart. This was a message kind of delivered to him from God, right? And then you have a different message come to Muhammad and a different message come to Moses, and they all do their best to express this understanding that they got from the divine ether of the universe out into the world. And I think it's different each time, and it can come with technology.
sure, I just want to like clarify a little bit different feeling I have on that thought. I don't like to think that God has to reach out to me and touch me. I prefer to think that we can all tap into that knowledge.
Yeah, that's a
right.
good point.
And so that it's not that God is deciding or whatever knowledge is deciding to reach out to me. It's that we all have the ability to tap into this knowledge resource.
Yeah.
And when we do become enlightened or whatever you want, it may be just like a little flash. It's just a small amount. Some people maybe experience more. whether
Mm.
that's like the Teslas and Einsteins and the people that really have done some crazy stuff, Buddha, whoever.
Yeah.
Um, because I just like to personally think that we're all capable of being in that realm,
Yeah.
and it's not some personal selection like I'm God, I decided to reveal to you this specific thing.
Yeah, and it's
I,
happened
I
to
like to
so
think
many,
that I can also tap into that, or you can,
and it's happened to a
anybody
lot of
can.
people,
Yeah.
right? So that would, it's very complicated, uh, what you just explained, right?
Mm,
Because the the first understanding of, or the simplest understanding of being touched by God or becoming enlightened is that it would be like God coming down and touching you, right? Or
mm,
delivering understanding into you. And that is some like special metaphysical, spiritual connection that occurs outside your body where something comes to you physically and connects with you and delivers understanding, right? But when we talk about the oneness of the universe and the connection among all human beings, right? If we look at that as almost a fourth dimensional plane where we are all connected, right? And it even connected to the understanding of God and the understandings that he brings to the prophets and that he bestows upon people. But more so, rather using that terminology, I like your terminology and understanding that we're already connected to it. And then and even though we can't see that fourth dimensional connection and we all seem separate from each other, and it seems as though something comes physically to me and touches me, in reality, we're all part of the same source. We're all part of the same connection, and we're all connected already. So when we tap into this inner balance and we're able to access this understanding, or we feel as though we're gaining understanding from the universe, I think it's more so the ability to tap into that connection that we have with each other and with the universe, and not so much have something come and touch us, but more so realize that we're inside of something or something like that. And then you end up gaining understanding.
yeah, I mean, it all comes back to Einstein and frames of reference. Did the cord come plug into me, or did I plug into the cord? I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Right? It
Yeah.
it depends on which side of the uh picture you're standing
Yeah,
on.
and it's both, right? So
Yeah,
we are disconnected
exactly.
right
It's
now.
both.
Yeah, this is it is, and it isn't. So it is so that we're here separated and we're not connected, and I have to verbally tell you things, right? But it's also that we're connected, and sometimes we don't have to talk to communicate, and we can send messages to each other just through a look. We could be in a separate room sometimes. I mean, there's not a lot of scientific data on this, but this is kind of in the realm we want to get into, where these connections that are occurring between people that aren't seen but are there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that that's where that ancient knowledge is coming from. I think that you know, we've been lucky over time to gain the insight that we have as human beings. And we don't know how much of that insight may have come from some other worldly understanding that we don't even know about, right? Like maybe humans are where they're at today because of God delivering understandings to people and bringing them onto the world, and we don't even know it. Like it's due to not understanding the system as well as we should, or as well as we would want to. It seems random and it seems like we're creating all this stuff, but like you said in the other episode, we know that this is too immense, too massive, too infinite for humans to be coming up with. There's a system to this entire process, and you know, new technologies and new ideas are part of that system that we didn't create, and we can't explain where they come from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that we're missing a lot of our understanding in the past, and you know, we talked about the dependability of past knowledge, and it ties into that in the understanding that we really need to remove these roadblocks of allowing new information and new understandings to come in, and being able to say we were wrong about this and this is a better understanding. You know, that's I think crucial to really gaining a true understanding of the ancient knowledge and breaking into that and deciphering what they may have known, if they know anything.
Yeah, totally agree, man.
Yeah.
I think this was a great chat. I appreciate it.
Yeah, very good. I just want to leave everybody with a little teaser. You know,
Yeah,
we'll
go
be
for it. Go for it.
you know, we work on the old manuscripts. You know, we have some manuscripts we work on from 300 BC, where we are trying to decipher the language from the manuscripts, which is like an ancient Sanskrit, classical Sanskrit or Devanagari language, without using the common understandings of it. And due to the amount of math that's in these manuscripts, we're able to try and pull patterns out and pull the math out without understanding the wording that's written with it. And I think that's, the fact that we have that project we're working on is what leads us a lot of times to this questioning of ancient knowledge and questioning of ancient languages and the Aramaic language and the Hebrew language and the Egyptian language, and that we have what's considered to be an understanding or translation of it, but you never know what we're going to find. And
that's a big teaser, man.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to getting into it, and those who watch to the end,
yeah, there's going to be
congratulations.
Some fireworks
we got things coming. So,
yeah. But yeah, we appreciate you guys watching. And it was another good discussion, and I'm sure we'll get back to you very soon.
Yeah, subscribe, like, comment.
Yeah,
and we'll see you next time.
Thanks a lot.
Yep.